Hi, and welcome to Your Prosperity, a podcast series on financial topics including tax, wealth creation, superannuation, lending, audit, and many other things that we deal with here on a regular basis at Prosperity Advisors. As with all financial podcasts, any advice you hear in this is general in nature and not to be relied upon. Please contact us for any specific advice. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. Today is the 14th of September, 2023. Something a little bit different for the podcast today. We're going to talk a bit about international business. I'm going to do this as a two-parter. So we'll talk about if you're an Australian business trying to do business in Asia, or if you're someone from outside Australia trying to do business in Australia. So we're going to have two guests. The first, part one, I will welcome ines.liu. Thank you very much for joining us. Ines is from Dezan Shira, who is affiliated with Prosperity, I guess, through our LEA network. They specifically, I guess, work, well, Ines specifically works in the Asia desk and head of the Australian group, essentially, for people trying to do business from Australia into Asia. So, Ines, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks a lot, Brandon. And it's so good to be in Brisbane, also with you in person.
Yes, it's a bit weird. Normally these podcasts I'm doing it where I'm talking to someone anywhere else they could be, but it just so happens 3 doors down from me and Nez is currently sitting. So, but the setup, it was easier to do it where you just do it over the screen. So, Nez, thanks for joining us. As I said, we'll put some details in the show notes on how people can find you and get hold of you if they need to. But probably kick it off, Asia, that's a big trade partner of Australia. What countries are we dealing with? Where are people going? Where are Australians, I guess, dealing with Asian countries? What are the ones we're talking to?
Yeah, so Australia actually is one of the largest export economies in the world and located in the South Pacific, and its main trading partners are within the Asian global market. So 12 of Australia's 15 largest trading partners are actually in the Asia region. So these partners account for 2/3 of Australian total exports, which also reflect to we have seen Australian has so many free trade agreement with the key Asian economies. I would say China is still one of the hotbed, but it's not only one. Biggest trading partner, and China is still, the capacity in terms of their market size, they can definitely absorb a lot of like Australian products. Just in the past 3 years, many Australian exporters have also diversified their markets to like Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia now to Australia, I think now is the second largest. So it's like a two-way trading partners after China, and it's ahead of the United States and India.
So that's if we look at, if we separated them out by, if we said China was one, the rest of Southeast Asia is essentially the second largest. Which makes sense from a geographical location. I guess they're near us, so they are an easy trading partner, as it's a lot easier to do business, I guess, with this Southeast Asia because of our proximity. I assume that's one of the biggest reasons and probably something that makes it easier for
Definitely. I think geographically lots of advantages to Australia, and also I think particular just like 2 weeks ago Mr. Albanese announced the government strategy for the most significant upgrade of Australia's economy engagement with ASEAN for a generation. That's big because it's a very practical pathway to increase Australia's two-way trade and investment with Southeast Asia.
Yeah, because that's hopefully going to encourage more trade, which will both regions, hopefully. Yeah. Just on that, I guess when we're talking trade with Southeast Asia, and Asia in general, I guess we're talking mining exports is obviously one of the biggest sort of ones, but there's a lot of professional businesses, I guess, who'd use, and even other businesses, lots of businesses who'd use, I guess I'd call it an outsourced function where you might have maybe a marketing and administrative team, an accounting, bookkeeping background team, something like that, where you might have people in an Asian country assisting do that for a lower cost of labor effectively to try and do that. Is that what we're talking about, both of those and everything else in between? Yep.
So I think Australia is a country actually on lots of things like they're very, very good at it. Or like, for example, I think healthcare industry, medical device, and also like I would say Australia as a country is like innovation or technology hunger country. There's a lot of things like this Australian business can really output, not just the input, like output to other country. So like investment towards to like emerging market like Asia. So I think there are definitely lots of opportunities for Australian business they can go to.
Yeah, that's right. So, and as Asia's, I guess, a big, I would say 12 out of 15 trading, or 12 out of our top 15. That surprised me, that number, but that would be right, I'm guessing. So, obviously a big trading region for Australia. So, for any businesses out there who are thinking, can I expand and what can I do? And whether that's, importing goods or exporting, or whether we're, labor, outsourced labor, et cetera, as I was talking about, that's, I guess, a region that would be of interest, and probably the first point of call if you're looking at doing some of that outsourced stuff. That'd be absolutely where you'd look to go. So if we're looking at doing that, what are the considerations? What are some of the key factors we need to think about if we're going to be dealing with a trading partner, I guess, in Asia?
Yeah, so I think for that question, I would definitely maybe rank like business environment, or sometimes we call like the ease of doing business in the country. That would be maybe the top consideration for like Australian business. You need to kind of assess. You need to give like assessment. That's the first thing first. Maybe I think it's just the example like we have seen like there's a kind of practice for business. They choose Singapore as like an investment hub, or just choose like like APAC headquarter. And one of the fundamental reasons is Singapore government. I think they really promoting like a pro-business environment. So they have it's conducive business ecosystem. I would say that's the fundamental, but also very important factors to foreign business.
And so that's more the government risk you're talking about. So is there a risk the government may not want that business in a couple of years or whatever it may be? That's the risk you're talking about there, is making sure you're aligning with a country that will, and that is conducive to wanting to do business with Australia, because obviously if you start something there and the government factors change, then that could be a big issue.
Yeah, because I think it's doesn't matter where you're from, like Australia or other countries, you want a stable. So you want the place you invest at least safe.
Yes. So, and that's, I guess, not only the appetite of the current government that might be there, but that stability and that long-term trading stability that Australia has probably had with that country.
Yeah, also I think the vision, and you see like you have progress, and then you have maybe the initiative or like the program or the policies to echo on that. So it's kind of like it reminds me, I think, like the country those people talk about like Vietnam. So they are also like emerging market, not just like being part of like a global supply chain or just like a low cost manufacturing center. Like supporting industry, I think they have a attractive substantial percentage, of like foreign direct investment to their country. Then we started seeing the government from Vietnam, though they also put like some into actions, like the policies they call like a supporting industry development program. I think it's maybe until like 2025, they still have different policies coming up. So the program, I think, aimed to like, for example, to alleviate domestic production in key manufacturing sectors. I think like automobile, textile, footwear, also I think electronics as well.
So the Vietnamese government, for example, is really, I guess, encouraging of that, is what you're saying. And I think you mentioned, we were chatting just earlier before we jumped on this podcast, you were sort of saying it's a bit like China 30 years ago, where they're really ramping up and encouraging people to do business with their country.
Yeah, they really make themselves like more friendly. So things like they can see maybe, oh, that part is not that friendly, and they change. They try to have a more like they're
willing to make it more friendly.
Policies, particularly I think for foreign investment.
So Vietnam's obviously one. I assume Philippines are probably similar in that regard as well. Are they encouraging a business as well? Is that another one?
I think compared to Vietnam, maybe the Philippines, we don't really see that many incentives like in terms of like from the government level. But yes, I think the Philippines, I think is sometimes we see that market like maybe compared to like labor force, labor workforce, and also so comparatively, I think cheaper as well. So if you want to set up like maybe the back office to support your business. So I think the Philippines definitely is one of.
So the Philippines maybe, and obviously there's lots of different considerations, but
India, Philippines, for that sense, similar. So that we'll see lots of people choose them as like back office.
So India, Philippines are sort of back office setup people, where Vietnam pretty heavy on textile industry, motor vehicle, that sort of side of it, if you're looking at some sort of manufacturing. And obviously we're talking very broad level here, but
just I think Vietnam is a little bit different because Vietnam kind of like advantage to taking the role as like a top destination of China +1. So they got lots of like advantage because I think geographical location, so they have the benefit from that, like manufacturing.
And you mentioned India, obviously, over 1 billion people. It's quite a big country and a lot of resource there, and they're a pretty big trading partner with Australia, I assume, as well, given the numbers.
Also, I think the 2023, actually, I think it came into effect this year. They have India and Australia, they have the new free trade agreement. So, but there's a lot of things going on. I think even, for example, the tariff to the premium, not old Australian wine, but the premium Australian wine will reduce a lot.
Oh, okay. That's good for the wine industry out there. And that, so we have pretty friendly agreements, I guess, with most Asian countries.
Pretty much, yeah.
I assume we don't with things like, North Korea, obviously we're not going to go down to those sort of trading partners there. We won't get into that one. But most of the Asian trading partners, we'd have friendly relationships. And you mentioned
pretty much,
Albanese's, I guess, talking more and rebuilding that relationship with China that might have swayed a bit in recent times. So that's good to hear. So if we're looking at doing, if one of the listeners out there, listeners of the business, looking at doing business in Asia, okay, we realize we're realizing it's a bit of a hotbed is Asia, because that's obviously where it's a location wise and price wise, it's a good option for most of the time. Considering the country risk is probably the big thing, as you mentioned. So which countries are going to be more conducive, and for the longer term, you don't want to spend a lot investing in a country to start this manufacturing, training, back office, whatever it is, and then have a governmental change that will significantly impact what you're trying to do. So we don't want to do that. Once we've decided we want to do that, I don't get on the phone and ring up Vietnam and say, hey, let's do business. What are those next steps? How do we start that process? I assume there's structures, there's decisions to make about how you do it and different ways to do it. What are some of those?
So then I think like it also depends on, I think, what your business activities, like business could be also intended to do in the region, maybe slightly different from what you do in Australia. Then I think you need to consider like where you want to set up. So like location, the north or center or the south. I mean, if we're talking about like Vietnam, but could be also like other countries. And also maybe the IP, your intellectual property, your trademark, if it's protect properly in the country. I think particular for like a country's first to file country, not first to use country system, then, and also particular for those emerging market, I think that's also a very important thing you need to do or need to manage at the very, very beginning.
Particularly if you've got a unique product you're trying to protect.
Particularly I think Australia has so many good products, the brands, and also go into exporting to other countries. That's also quite important. Particularly, I think you do like online business, e-commerce, so they can maybe just register or like the backface registration all the time. So IP issue. And also, I think what kind of investment vehicles you want to use, that we also kind of ICO, what kind of business activities, profit repatriation, if a property can get your profit from that country, but what kind of could be dividend, or if you actually licensing something, maybe technology know-how, maybe royalty payment or service fee, or like how do you fund your operation, maybe tax accounting, or if you are actually eligible for the tax incentive.
And I guess that's important, because if you're an Australian business and you'll be taxed on your worldwide income. But if you're running an operation in an Asian country, you'll be likely taxed there as well. And you want to make
Yeah.
sure there's those dual tax agreements and you're getting the credit.
Yeah, definitely.
How much tax do you pay there versus how much tax you pay in Australia?
Yeah,
Should all the profit be
yeah.
there? There's a lot of, I guess, a lot
Yeah.
that goes in the background. So, and sometimes I guess it's, do you set up a structure? Do you have a company in, we'll stick with Vietnam as the example. Do you set up a company or a trust in Vietnam to employ staff to do the manufacturing, or do you just, I guess, liaise with an established entity that's already there, an established business, and outsource effectively through them? That's probably a consideration as well, I'd imagine.
And also, I think the point you just mentioned kind of reminds me of like, if you also want to use in like a holding company, that also kind of related to if Australia has double tax treaty agreement with a country, because otherwise, if maybe there's no business substance, or then you might not be eligible for the reduced tax rate, because pretty much the entity can be seen through.
Yeah, so you might get a reduced tax rate in a certain country.
So that would be also consideration to be taken into account.
Yeah, so because so it's more than just what structure, it's what, I mean, you must deal with a lot of stuff, all the different countries, I guess, understanding what is the better one, geopolitically, let's say, geographically, geopolitically, but then also their tax system as well, and how you should structure it, what entity you should set up. Should you just go direct to I guess, to an outsourced provider? Yeah, those considerations are quite significant. So there's quite a lot to consider. And appreciate that you're, I guess, part of our, as I said, part of our LEA network, which is fantastic that we've got you as part of the network so we can, if we've got clients who are looking at that, we can hopefully they've heard you on the podcast and they ring up and say, how do I get in contact with Ines? And we can line you up straight away to have a chat to see what options could be out there for you, because it's definitely something that, the cost of everything in Australia is going up. If it can be done more efficiently and cheaper, I guess, in an outsourced environment, or in an Asian country, is likely going to be better for business in Australia, and a lot of factors to consider. And there's any other, I guess, trying to keep it short. If we went into detail on all of these topics, we'd be here for an hour. So keep it rolling along, I guess. Any other major considerations people should think about, or is it just depends on the industry, depends on what they're trying to do?
Then I think it's maybe there's something I think I just mentioned, like investment vehicles, what kind of vehicles you want to adopt. So that could be also setting up a presence in the region. So also you don't have to do that without a presence. So if you want to set up your company, having a presence, they could be also categorized into profit, like it just generating profit activity or not generating profit activities. So sometimes you don't want to expose yourself too much. You don't want to too much liabilities. You can just having like market research, business development. You at least have a company in the region, and you can talk to your customers in the region, and also we sign a contract also with overseas subsidiaries. So normally we call like a representative office, even I think slightly different, maybe country by country. Then you can also have, if this very mature market and you know what you want, and you can set up your legal entity, which normally I think limited liability company.
Similar to we have in Australia, a limited liability company of some sort potentially there. But as you rightly said, not all situations are going to want that. You might want to have it just, very low profit center over there providing some service to you, but not necessarily a full-blown operation over there. So
so like if I think it's without entity, you have also quite a few options if you just want to sourcing like a maybe raw material or some component. So you can just like kind of using the country as like a sourcing center. Or you are like a manufacturing, you can definitely just outsourcing the manufacturing process in a region. I think also sometimes like you're not really 100% sure if that's the market really fit in, but you have like a candidate, or you can potentially you really need to hire someone on the ground. You can also using like maybe there's like the concept of like an employer of record, or just I think offshore hiring to use like an HR agency to hire the people on behalf of you. And then I think the people locally their compliance requirement can be met. So I think that we've seen, I think that will be the structures normally for people. They want to just enter the market for the first steps. And then if things going very well, you can actually set up your presence for the next stage.
Yeah, so like a bit of a try before you buy, or to ease your way into it. And particularly, it's important to make sure you're following the local rules and the local processes too. You don't want to come in without just without help and really stuff that up. Otherwise, you might enter the country and not be allowed to leave the country. So it's important to get those things right and understand what the rules are in each particular country, I guess, that you have, if you have operations there, more so.
Yeah.
Well, Ines, appreciate it. Ines.liu, thank you very much for joining us. We'll put your details up in the show notes. But anyone that's getting in contact with Ines from Dezan Shira, who are, as I said, part of the LEA network with Prosperity, so one of our partner firms we can give a call to, and head of the Australian Dex, Ines definitely knows what she's talking about there, and it's been great chatting to you all day today, which has been handy. So thanks very much for that. Thanks for joining us. Everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to know more about what we do at Prosperity, listen to some of the other podcasts. And I've got a second part to this coming out with Charles Yarn, one of our Australian experts. He'll be talking about Asian countries or other countries looking to do business in Australia. So similar to this chat, but the reverse of. So Ines, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, it was fun.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us for today's podcast. Hopefully you liked it, and if so, please give us a few stars, like and share. And if you'd like to follow the series, please subscribe and pass any information on to your friends as well if you think they might like it. For more information about who we are, head to prosperity.com.au and follow the links.